They're schemers. Schemers trying to control their little worlds. I'm not a schemer. When the chips are down, these civilized people, they'll eat each other. And here we go.
Well, hello there. How is everyone? I hope you're all well on this terrific Tuesday. I always think about saying a word and my head just goes blank. What begins with T? Terrific. I just can't think of any more. Anyway, you're looking absolutely amazing. We'll get straight into the meat and potatoes. As this morning we are talking about none other than Brucato. Is it Dr. Gary Brucato? He's the little guy. There's some irony here, I'm telling you, because we're going to talk about Brucato, his thoughts around the Idaho 4 case, specifically Brian Kohberger, and the irony being that he is someone who spends a lot of his time sitting next to Chris McDonough, who we know as an ex-law enforcement individual who was involved in coercion and getting false confessions out of people as a police officer using none other than the Reed technique. If you're unfamiliar with the Michael Crow case, go familiarise yourself with it, and don't get me started on during the Gabby Petito case when he would nearly destroy the life of an individual by yes, he accused him of being Brian Laundrie when he absolutely wasn't, which resulted in the temporary termination of his channel, Chris McDonough's. He was reinstated, never offered an apology, but yeah, what a shit show. But yeah, I just find that it's quite ironic that you've got someone coming out to speak about Brian Kohberger, and as if they think they nailed why this all happened, and he spends a lot of his time sitting next to someone who was basically involved in dodgy policing. But anyway, let's get on to this. Now we've got irony out of the way. Forensic psychologist analyzes the psychosexual motive Idaho murder Brian Kohberger's real motive. Was it though? I like the fact they put, yeah, it's the real motive. The real motive. If you don't know, just make shit up. Brian Kohberger was driven by an extreme desire for control and notoriety rather than a blind hatred of women, forensic psychologist Dr. Gary Brucato has told a new male podcast. How the fuck do you know? Even if Brian Kohberger did it, how the fuck do you know what was going through his mind? He might just have a hatred of everybody in general and thought, fuck it, I'm going to kill someone. The fact is that there's so many questions around this case that we're going to talk about in video 2 today, which looks real in depth at whether this is indeed Brian Kohberger's swan song and he did it, or is it indeed a strategic move which will open up a few doors that didn't exist before he did that. So if you're not subscribed to the channel, subscribe to the channel, smash like and all that jazz, and all that good stuff. But anyway, let's get on with Mr. Bruschetti. I said that on purpose. I didn't get his name wrong, like by accident. Speaking to journalist and host Laura Collins, the violent crime expert saw shades of infamous serial killer Ted Bundy in Kohberger's murder of 4 college students in their rental home. Back to the Bundy situation. Back to Ted Bundy. Dr. Brucato contrasted Kohberger's evil psychosexual fantasies with the extreme misogyny that drove infamous incel murderer Elliot Rodger. So it's like a hybrid. Brian Kohberger is basically like a hybrid. He's like if Elliot Rodgers and Ted Bundy got together, somehow made a baby, and that would be Brian Kohberger. That's what Bruschetti's saying. Sorry, Brucato. Kohberger 30 was charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of burglary for the November 2022 killings, but controversially accepted a plea deal in July 2025 to avoid the death penalty. Asked whether the victims' families' heartfelt statements at the sentencing would have any effect on Kohberger, Dr. Brucato said he feared that for killers like him, such public grief becomes part of their fantasy. like the fact that, but despite this guy, it's supposed to be some psychologist of some description. Who knows whether that is an absolute genuine thing, which I'm going to question, and why I question it. I don't know whether he did go through the entire schooling and got it the right way, or whether he found it in the bottom of his cereal box. Who knows? Because what I find it very difficult to understand here is why a doctor, Dr. Brucato, wouldn't at least acknowledge, and maybe he does go on to acknowledge it, because this is me first reading this with you. Brian Kohberger's ASD. So ASD alone would very much, or it would be very likely, that the heartfelt statements of the victims would fuck off over his head just with ASD alone. The ASD sufferers very frequently lack and display a severe lack of empathy. They just don't compute things the way that we do. And that's got nothing to do whether they're a killer or not. That's just ASD on its own. But this is all to do with killers like him. Killers like him. What the fuck do you mean, killers like him? Name us another killer that even if you look at Brian Kohberger did it. Let's say Brian Kohberger did it. What other mass fucking murderers do you know that's like Brian Kohberger? It's currently, according to the US public, acceptable for a mass murderer to apparently drive their own car to a crime scene, drive around all of the cameras, take their own phone, take a selfie after it, leave a victim, leave a witness, sorry, after standing like 3 feet away from them. I don't know. Fuck it. Without questioning it, without questioning a single fucking thing. So we're gonna come down here now. Ted Bundy again. I've seen more pictures of Ted Bundy since the beginning of this Idaho 4 case than I have in the Ted Bundy case. The family's approach was to try and get under his skin, Dr. Brucato said. That's because they had a sense that for a budding serial killer like Kohberger, the motive is to compensate for feelings of inadequacy. Those killers want to level the playing field through domination, control, manipulation of other people, usually in a psychosexual way, or in the playing out of some sort of fantasy. The idea is to tear them apart, to show that nothing that was done did that. That in the end, no one cares about you, that they've achieved no degree of notoriety beyond kind of a flash. I think that's terrific. Bollocks, so. Because this case, because of how it is and what a shit show it is, and now even more of a shit show because of these documents that have come out, this ain't a flash in the pan. He has gained fucking notoriety. Absolutely has gained notoriety. And the fact that these people stood up in court and said what they did, and he absolutely did not give a flying fuck, that is not a win for them. It's not a win for them. I hate to say it. And this isn't me offering support to Brian Kohberger, because I still sit on the fence of, I don't know whether he did it. And that's the point. We've now got to a point where we're this far down the line, all this has happened, and you still look at Brian and think, did he fucking do it or not? Did this guy actually do this crime or not? All these things that we've been told he did, that are completely unsupported by evidence, even more so now. We've got blood everywhere. We've got blood at other people's properties that disappears off the face of the planet. We've got an eyewitness who claims that she was parked next to Brian, then somehow she wasn't parked next to Brian. She was parked next to what could potentially be an unmarked police car. You've also got situations that you just couldn't make it up. You genuinely just couldn't make it up. 8-hour fucking delays, and the people who never called law enforcement are literally here and screaming, and sounds that would suggest potentially the use of a taser. Who the fuck knows? Unless they brought not only a fucking vacuum cleaner but fireworks and had a damn party in there. After all, it was a party house. But anyway, so let's carry on. But we must think about the kind of person this is. And I'm afraid to say he was like an automaton during those statements, like a calculating machine, I wondered while he was sitting there, he wasn't reliving in his mind what he had done, fantasizing. This is just talking about what is popular narrative. And this is what I notice with a lot of these people, right? Let me just come up here for a second. And if you are someone who spends a lot of time around social media, you look through the comments, you look at what's, the popular thread that weaves through your chosen narrative. So if we say like the guilters, for instance, and then you'll get people like this who they know what they're doing because they're looking at what's being said in the community, and then they will talk about it. And that is to offer people who are around this niche, they like affirmation. It's like, oh, I was right. Bruschetti told me. I mean Brucato, he told me, he said that this was he was sitting there fantasizing about it. Because there's a load of comments in there saying, "Oh, Brian Kohberger was sitting in there," and you'd see he was clearly fantasizing about the crimes. Clearly fantasizing about the crimes. No, he's ASD. It's quite possibly that he was sitting there in that courtroom and he was thinking about elephants on fucking skateboards. It's quite possible. I hate to burst your bubble. Who knows? Who knows? But yeah, Brucato went on to describe Kohberger as a textbook serial killer. Well, he's not a serial killer, is he? He's a mass murderer. He's not a serial killer. Now, we did question yesterday because I believe that whoever did this crime, they had skill. They had. I don't believe this was whoever did this their first rodeo. Now, whether it was their first rodeo with humans, that's questionable. That's debatable. But I don't think this was the first time this person is killed. I believe that whoever did this crime was a hunter. They were a hunter, and they were a killer. Flat out killer. I look at Brian Kohberger and I know that there's no specific mold that people fit into, and you say, right, this is the serial killer mold, and like I don't know. I just don't see him. He looks like he doesn't look like he could punch his way out of a wet paper bag. Whose motivations, like Ted Bundy's, we're back on Ted Bundy, centered on control interwoven with sexual desire. Well, they've consistently said that there was no sexual part of this whatsoever. There was nothing like that. So I don't know. Maybe when he sat down in there on the seat, he got his nuts and bolts out. Who the fuck knows? Both killers were educated and superficially charming, the forensic psychologist observed, using their intelligence to carefully plan attacks on young women driven by fantasies of domination rather than obvious rage. I like this, look. Carefully planned attacks. Carefully planned attacks. So Brian Kohberger's just like these. If he's the killer, he's just like these, the carefully planned attacks. Acquire murder weapon. Amazon. And when I've used it and lost it, I will go back on Amazon and order replacement. Clothing, I'll also get that from local stores as well, making sure that there is definitely a trace and that can be traced. How do I get to the murder scene? That's it. I will drive own car, making sure to drive around the estate and get caught on all these cameras. Check. Phone, I don't need my phone because I've been there like 20 odd times, but on this particular night, I'll definitely take it. I'll just turn it off because that won't stick out like a fucking sore thumb, will it? Really? That's not careful and strategic planning, is it? That's fucking the complete opposite of careful and strategic planning. Like I said before, if Brian Kohberger genuinely is 100% the person who did this, he is the most fucking stupid person who has ever done this crime. People, Freudian slip. I'll always say that there was more than one person in there. Kohberger's interest in Bundy was well documented. Court documents reveal he had undertaken several Google searches on the serial killer before the murders took place. This is a doctor. This is Dr. Brucato. Dr. Brucato. He is a psychologist. Kohberger's interest in Bundy was well documented, completely breezing over the fact that he was a criminology student, and very likely searching Bundy was part of his studies, but we'll just ignore that. This is definitely something else. skips over ASD, skips over criminology student. He's just into Bundy. Control is really what this story is all about, Dr. Brucato argued. Everything, even including this plea deal, seems to be about control. Is it? I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure. Either way, if he's guilty, if he's innocent, the plea deal is about staying the fuck alive. That's as simple as that. And I know went for it. You've got to ask why they went for it more than anything. That's precisely why we feel so dissatisfied. Here's somebody who was arbitrating who lives and who dies, and ultimately managed to live himself. That's depressing. Kohberger is quite easy to figure out. His motives, as demonstrated in what was on the ground, are fairly classic. There are clues that this was psychosexual. Kohberger was viewing deeply disturbing pornography, like a lot of guys who are out there, I'm afraid. He clearly idolized sexually motivated serial killers. Yeah, clearly, because being a criminology student, he just happens to search one of the most prolific and known serial killers that there is, Ted Bundy. If you did a survey and asked 1,000 people, name me a serial killer, I would say the vast majority of them will say Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer. Them two are probably the most known worldwide, I would say. And so they're going to say one or the other. But he says he clearly idolized sexually motivated serial killers. Clearly, because he had a T-shirt that said, "I love sexually motivated serial killers." The greatest clue was that he purchased a knife months before there was even a victim selected. How the fuck do you even know that he purchased it before there was even a victim selected? How do you know that? There's literally, because they can't see where there's a connection, can't see a connection, how do they know that there weren't a connection a long time ago? Because they've found nothing. They found nothing, so they can't say that there was nothing. There isn't nothing. But months before, that's a blatant guess. That means you have a fantasy. Then you go out like a casting agent to find a person you can cast in your fantasy, and chooses this fucking place that you could walk into and there could be 20 people. That's one fucking hell of a fantasy. A representative of the group he felt rejected by, attractive young women, he homed in on a specific victim who was representative of that whole group. Brucato said that the lack of personal relationship between Kohberger and his victims is particularly reminiscent of Bundy. Sticking on Bundy. Yeah, he looks the same as what I felt when I was just doing that. Oh my God, not Bundy again. Shut up, Busquets. I don't know. A serial killer doesn't want a direct connection with his victim, the forensic psychologist said. There's a story about Ted Bundy that he once picked up a potential victim and she started talking too much about her life, her identity, that he dumped her because it was too difficult to project onto her. Some media outlets initially compared Kohberger to incel killer Elliot Rodger, the 22-year-old who murdered 6 people in California in 2014 out of hatred towards women who rejected him. But asked by host Collins whether he sees validity in the comparison, Dr. Brucato said Kohberger was more imitating Bundy and doesn't meet the definition of an incel. I'd say the amount that you're trying to push this Bundy thing, you've obviously did quite a lot of your own research into Bundy, probably more than Brian Kohberger did. Bundy is much more of what Kohberger aspired to be, he told the podcast. The in-control person who knows how to use empathy to manipulate people. Use empathy to manipulate people. Students fucking hated him, and the people who were like professional individuals who spent time with him, they thought he was a decent guy, and nothing ever happened to them. Nothing ever happened to all of the people who said Brian Kohberger was fine. Students thought he was a wanker. What you see in Kohberger was more that when women would get near him, he wouldn't know what to do. If he ever got in an intimate moment, he would shut the woman down or condescend them or say something weird. So again, this is just ASD what you are explaining here. This is just traits of ASD. And you're too fucking dense to understand that clearly. He told a woman he went on a date that he would like to tickle her when she had great birthing hips. Again, this is typical of ASD, the inappropriate nature, the matter of fact statements. That they might not turn around and say, "Oh, you've got a gorgeous figure. Fuck me, you look like you could carry a baby, right?" Do you know what I mean? That is ASD. There's no relevance to being a killer hair. What would have been more relevant to him being an absolute nutcase serial killer hair is if this woman didn't exist to tell this story, and instead there was posters of her on the back of milk cartons saying "went on a Tinder date, never seen again. Last heard being tickled." That's very different to an incel. The incel doesn't even get the opportunity. There you go. What do we got? That's got to be it, surely, or is he still going on? Is he still going on? I think that's actually it. I think that's it. I hope that's it, because he was starting to really grind my gears there. But that's a specialist. That is a specialist talking about Brian Kohberger and this psychosexual motive, and that he's definitely idolised Ted Bundy. I'd love for some of these specialists to really go through. I challenge them. I dare them to go through all of these documents that are out. That's what I would really love to see. I'd like to see the interview room, ex-cops, police off the cuff, whatever they are. Even Grey Poobs investigates. People like these who are hardcore guilters, if you like, going through these documents and putting their spin on it to talk about what you're seeing, what you're hearing, and what they think and feel about the documents. Like the 8-hour time delay, when you're literally seeing that these people were hearing screams, the bushy eyebrows that the judge even turned around and agreed,
this was something that was consistent through all of the interviews,
proving that fucking bald tosser didn't even read through them, because it clearly wasn't a continuous thread about the bushy eyebrows. We can see that. So it's all manufactured shite, with things cleverly hidden from view that should have been shown, and other things made up. Anyway, rant over. Love you all. Let me know down below what you think, and subscribe and all that jazz. Yeah, love you all. Mwah.